I'll start by recognizing myself and Ranking Member to present our opening statements. And without objection, the members of the subcommittee will be recognized to present their opening remarks. I ask that they do so in a timely manner to allocate time for all present members. Now I yield myself time to present my opening statement. Earlier this summer, on July 16th, the Panamanian government discovered and detained the North Korean-flagged Changchungang cargo vessel traveling from Cuba. Found on board were 25 cargo containers of Cuban weapons and other UN-sanctioned items bound for the rogue regime in North Korea. In anticipation of the UN Security Council Sanctions Committee, their impending report on the incident, I've convened this subcommittee today to investigate further Cuba's recent history of military proliferation and noncompliance with UN sanctions, and to review the options available to the subcommittee to attempt to hold Cuba accountable for their violations. The facts in this case are not in dispute. At the time of their discovery, the Cuban Foreign Ministry said that the tanker was carrying 10,000 pounds of sugar, 10,000 tons of sugar, and 240 metric tons of obsolete defensive weapons, including disassembled missiles, 2 MiG-21 jet fighters, and 2 disassembled anti-aircraft missile complexes to be repaired and returned to Cuba. But here's what the Panamanian officials actually found hidden among the bags of Cuban sugar: night vision equipment, small arms and light weapons ammunition, rocket-propelled grenades, and artillery ammunition for anti-tank guns. This cargo is a clear violation of the UN sanctions imposed on North Korea after its series of nuclear bomb tests. This is a potentially groundbreaking case where a country in the Western Hemisphere is likely to be found in violation of the UN Security Council sanctions on weapons proliferation. Many experts believe, and the Castro regime itself has actually admitted to the violation of international sanctions in this case. I am convinced that this case should and would be getting a lot more international attention if not for the daily and deadly news coming out of Syria, and now heinous al-Shabaab acts of terrorism at the mall in Nairobi, Kenya. The narrative that defenders of the Castro regime would like us to believe is that much of the weaponry was to be repaired and or modernized and returned to Cuba, and that it is no longer involved in such illicit activities. But at least in this instance, it is undeniable that they got caught red-handed in direct violation of the sanctions, and they must be held accountable. This subcommittee has been told that knowing it is in violation of international sanctions, the Castro regime has begun a full charm offensive at the UN to convince the Sanctions Committee that it should, in fact, be applauded for its compliance and cooperation in this case, rather than punished and sanctioned for its international and intentional breach of this sanctions regime. Failure to hold the Cuban government fully responsible will also be a slap in the face to our allies. If Cuba is allowed to get away with this time, it would send a terrible message to Panama, which put its resources and its reputation on the line to intercept this vessel. Even worse, other countries in the future might decide it simply isn't worth the cost and energy of pursuing similar violations to the benefit of rogue regimes in North Korea and Iran. A further concern is that it appears that the Cuban military's rogue business activities are growing increasingly dangerous. Yet current U.S. travel policy continues to feed the Cuban military's business interests. For example, U.S. travelers to Cuba stay almost exclusively at the Cuban military's five-star hotels. I believe that this policy should be halted, and that remittances from the U.S. should not be allowed to further fuel the moribund Castro regime. If Cuba is not properly reprimanded in the strongest terms available, it could very well embolden Venezuela and other ALBA states to find ways to help other rogue regimes. We know Venezuela has already been helping Iran skirt U.S. financial sanctions. Allowing Cuba to get away with violating international weapons sanctions would send a very dangerous message to the international community at large. I very much look forward to hearing from our expert witnesses today as we delve further into these questions and how the subcommittee can most effectively work to ensure international sanctions are upheld with meaningful consequences for any violations. And I yield time to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Sears.